Looks everybody's here. Mark will do this in the public business.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of business is to adopt tonight's agenda, and as far as I know, there aren't any changes from our printed agendas.
Make a motion that we adopt the agenda. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt tonight's agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. The guest presentation, there was one listed, but
Yeah, she sent me something. Let me give me a moment here.
You go back to this.
Yeah, how about I just play it during the action item?
yeah. Okay.
Okay, yeah, sounds good, yeah.
All right, so we'll just dispense with that. Amy can figure out how to handle it in minutes. We're on to agenda item 5, which is the consent agenda, which is the minutes of the January meeting, payment of the bills, and classified personnel action, which is hire, resignation, and hire some substitutes. So I'll let you guys review the bills really good before we have a motion to vote.
So I got a question. So is this like an early learner collaborative grant from these first 5?
It's all paid by the grant, so it's not coming out of our funding.
Yeah.
Is that preschool grant?
Yeah.
And so these are people who are doing preschool in our community.
They're on the collaborative. Yeah.
That was kind of an odd one because we're actually housing money for people that don't work for the district.
Yeah.
What do we buy the lead balls for?
What's that?
Lead shot balls, 7.5 pound bag.
Mr. McDowell?
That's me.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. I'm like, just a minute here. I'm like looking.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of Eric stuff on here right now too. He had a grant as well, so a lot of that's grant as well.
So how many times did we have to add this to snowplow? Just once, or did you do it twice? Or?
How many times do we have what?
Snowplow, how many times did you have to do it?
I want to say they did it twice,
Okay.
each school. And it's split out there. It shows you KHS and JES. Maybe the copy machine. Yeah, the machine gives that to me. Yeah, because I put staples, something like that too. So you might have duplication, sorry.
We have a lot of
I thought it
lollies.
was being really cool with the copy machine, and apparently we don't get along.
You got another grant?
We're in the wrong business.
You might be getting repeats here.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. I assume there's no patron input? Okay, information reports. Kim, financial report.
Okay, well, I give you your reports. The biggest thing is this month is that we've been looking for another accountant. And we've talked with Quest CPAs and Harris, and they are recommended by the ISBA. I've talked to both. I really like Quest. I feel like they were easier to talk to and get along with. I mean, not that Harris would be bad, but Harris is also a lot more expensive than Quest. And they were a lot easier to talk to. It was more like talking to Jen, talking to Quest kind of thing. So that's why I'm going that route. And Quest also knows our accounting program. And so they're willing to help us at the end of the year close the books and stuff. And Harris would have to hire somebody else out to come help us if needed and that kind of thing. So, I don't know. And then Quest also, they're right at 11,000 here. So, any questions that I should have throughout the year, they're not going to charge us extra, where Harris will. So, I'm really leaning towards Quest, but what do you guys think? And then we also talked to the Murray Group. We used to have the Murray Group come out and help us with our insurance and that kind of stuff. And Katie came down and talked to the three of us the other day, and it would be really nice to get them back because they understand our insurance, know how things work. They're able to explain it to the employees better than we are. And they're also able to help us out on finding a good plan to go with, where we have to try to figure out, what's the best plan for our group. I know it's going to cost a little extra, but it's not that much. And I think we can kind of absorb that a little bit in our, because we have that big fund, the, we call it the, Steve help me out, the trust fund. We have that trust fund, so I think we could help absorb that through that. So, anyways, do you have anything to add to that, Steve? The Murray Group stuff? Or?
No, I think that, the next month or two we should talk about it more and consider it. I think that I think the benefits of it outweigh the cost, and I also think that like
The state plan and
when we look at the state plan that is gone through, and making that transition over, I think they can help lay it out there, but at the same time we have to understand that they do have a stake in the game. Like if we were to go to the state plan, you know, they lose business. And so we have to, you know, have our eyes open. But, you know, like, I think there's probably, you know, opportunity there to make up the additional cost and save that amount somewhere, you know. But I think having them, we can help it, but we can evaluate that a little bit better. You know, I think every single district in our region, except for Moscow, uses Murray, I think. I think that there's some benefits there of having a consultant when it comes to our benefits. But, you know, like I said, I think we gotta, anyway, you know, Deary just went to them a year or two ago, I think, and like the $29 per employee per month that they're being charged, they were able to save just by tweaking their plan and doing some things. So they actually saved that money. So I think we should consider it down the road. Worst comes to worst, it's 1 year and then we don't do it again. But I think there might be some benefit there. Anyway, it's nothing tonight, but just to look forward.
Just something to look forward
Have you
to.
come
I
up
just,
with any concrete proposals on the state plan? Deductibles are, what they cover, what they don't cover?
I haven't seen like a side-by-side comparison to the, you know, the stuff that I'm seeing is kind of comparable, to be honest. You know, the vibe I'm getting in our region is that, you know, going to the state plan might not be the best option. But like I said, Murray Group also consults with every district in our region too. So we just have to, you know, weigh that, I guess.
they also would do a comparison for us as well between the state plan and our plan and give us options that way too.
Well, and you really have to do an analysis too of this cost savings of your guys' time as well, you know, so if you're not spending as much time helping people with open enrollment and, I mean, and they come and support that, there's
And really, $29 isn't that much. I mean, it's a month, but yeah.
There's some things that they provide that we'll present whenever, you know, next
Right.
month or so when it comes, but I think it's something to look at.
They'll help us with our additional grants as well. Other than medical, like with American Fidelity and all that, they'll help us with all that as well. So it'd just be easier just to have one person rather than 15 other people coming in to tell us, you know, how to do things. But there's just something to look forward to, I guess. Something to think about. Any questions from me?
Nothing out of the ordinary as far as expenses go, or as far as income go, just pretty much.
You know, everything's pretty much just the same at the moment.
So what we like to hear. Okay, if there are no questions, we'll move on to the Technology Director's report.
All right, so this month, the Chromebooks we ordered arrived. We're looking right now at approximately 45-day lead time if we need anything. So I'm going to have to get orders in sooner than later. The PCs for the CTE lab that we approved last month, they've been ordered. We were too late to get them, so we're hoping that maybe March sometime, but that's not a guarantee. Just with the market being the way that it is, we have to move very quickly on stuff as it comes up, if it's available. Otherwise, it's as you know, you may never see it. So, I went to the ITA conference. That's the Tech Directors Conference. Thank you for letting me go to that one. It's a good chance for me to meet with guys in industry and see where we're at, kind of parse through some things, see what's going on down at the state, and help plan a vision. And so based on that,
I'll be working with Mr. Kirkland next month. I'm going to come to you guys with a strategic plan because we're due for some pretty major overhauls here. And I've got an idea of exactly how we're going to get it done, but I'm going to flush it out with him within the budget that we're getting, so that way you guys can see what it's going to look like over the next 3 years. It'll get us in education. We're never on the bleeding edge of what goes on in the world. We're catching up to the tail end of what they were doing 10 years ago. So we're actually, one of the things we're planning on doing is actually what industry went to like 2 and 3 years ago. As a matter of fact, one of the vendors that we're working with, this is what they did last year. So that's what we're catching up to. For other districts to do this, it's going to take them a while. So it's just the way that it works. We did publish our RFP for our E-rate Category 1, which is our primary internet service and our connections between the buildings. It's a good thing that this is the 3rd year because we need a massive upgrade to the connections between the elementary and the high school and the outgoing connection. As with anything, as you grow and you utilize the services more, you're asking it to do things, they get taxed. And we've grown in the past couple of years to where we need more bandwidth between the elementary school and here, and we need more pipe going out to the internet, which is a testament to the stuff that we're working on, right? The students are using the devices more. We have a lot of programs, we have a lot of things in place that we're utilizing. And unfortunately, the last contract we were under, we had no room to move. There was no way to expand anything based on the verbiage of our last contract. And so this is a big refresh for us. So early March, I think it's like March 3rd is when the RFP closes, and we'll see if we actually get somebody other than one vendor to bid on our stuff this year, because in theory there should be about 3 now that are in the area, but we'll wait and see what comes back out of that, and I'll let you know next month who ended up with the contract for that. So, all right, that's what I've got this month. Anybody have any questions?
No, but I was going to say, you know, if you get to a point where you have something that you need to buy and you need a board, let us know. I mean, we could have a special meeting if we have to. I know waiting a month right now in technology, even waiting a week right now, it's gone, you know, that fast. So I don't know if the rest of the board, but if it's something where our students need it, I mean, if we need to have a special meeting to get something approved because of some kind of sensitivity, that we would support that.
Okay. Like I say, if I get in that position and we've got to move quickly on something, I'll get with Mr. Kirkland and he can make the call there.
But I've had a lot of things that, I mean, Apple alone is 14, 16 weeks out for stuff.
Yes. I was amazed actually at the iPads that we ordered last year, how long they took to actually get here. I mean, it was down to the day when they told me, because I was like, really? February is when those are going to come in? Seriously? We ordered them in September? Oh, February. You know, normally that's a lead time that they give you, and then 2 months later they give it to you, and you're like, oh, look, we got it sooner. No, it was to the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I mean, you know, if you're at a point where it's aiming for next fall, you know, you need to do something fast. So anyway,
All right,
that's
perfect. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you. I guess it's Dory's next.
Yeah, I don't really have much. Our attendance is pretty much the same at 5%. No new kids, no discipline referrals, but I did give you the comparisons. I did this time, September to February, for our reading and how that's looking. And we'll be testing sometime in May, and that is our final IRI score. So next month I'll report. We're having the ERI, that's the early reading intervention, for the 2 weeks, and that just really, the teachers teach that for 2 weeks and try to boost those kids up. So anyways, that's kind of what's been going on in our building.
I just wanted to say I was in the school the other day for a basketball game, but I like all the colors and the tiger stuff you've added and all the little scenes in the hallway. This looks really nice. So.
Shelby, it looks like you did it. Sorry.
Oh, Scotland.
You got mine.
looks to me like we're making a little progress.
Yeah, you can, you know,
I mean,
month to
yeah,
month is
progress
hard.
Mhm. Yeah.
Especially, February 1st, what was that on? Was that on Tuesday? Can't remember the date. The first of the month is always the testing. It opens up to a Tuesday testing window, and so if you're scheduled to do, the kids, if they're normally scheduled to do their eye station, then it assesses. So if the teacher's not really aware of, oh, it's the first today, they're going to assess, then they might not be, you know, ready for go time, you know. So anyways, it just depends month to month, but a lot of our teachers do catch that it's the first and typically wait maybe a couple days and make sure that the kids are ready. So anyways.
And so they give them a test every month, and about how long does it take?
It depends on your level, but K1 is about 30 minutes. It's lengthy. And then each time it assesses something different. Well, really text fluency for the older kids, but it was a little bit more numeric awareness and text fluency, decoding, and spelling, vocabulary. So.
And did the teachers, how do the teachers feel about it? Do they all like it? Or?
I mean, it's great information for them.
Yeah.
I don't think, they don't necessarily hate it, but I think sometimes it is mundane, you know, especially the K1 kids, it takes a long time.
Well, yeah, we understand.
Mm-hmm. And some of the students need a quiet environment, and it's not always that quiet. They're not always focused, so, but it is good information. And they do use the information because we talk about it in our data meetings. We will talk about kids and their needs. If they're low in an area, then ask them what are you doing in your classroom to help those skills. And so, anyways.
Well, for the kindergarten and first grade, it's more developing the habit of taking the test.
Yes, it is showing, yes, especially the first couple, 3 times. It's hard to, they've never been on it. I mean, maybe their parents, but a systematic way to test, it's tough. But that's why it's okay. In September, you get a little bit more funding when the kids are at a 3 versus at 1, so yeah, that's okay.
Good. Anybody else have any questions for the board? All right, we'll move along to the principal's and superintendent's report.
Okay, our student numbers, when I typed this up, it was at 122, but we're back up to 123, so we lost one, gained one. Since the past month, our students of the month were Miranda Thornton and Jack Silflow. Discipline report, we had 10 referrals, 1 suspension, and 1 bus referral. Attendance was down about 1.5% or so from last month, so we're at 92.63. We have a little bit of sickness going through right now again, actually. In high school athletics, our girls basketball team will be in Nampa this week for the state tournament. Our boys are starting soon as well. They'll go into the districts as the #1 seed. Junior high has started. We have 7 girls playing and 19 boys playing junior high basketball. I included a letter from the JK Baseball Association. I'm not going to read the full letter right now, but it's a request to help with some of the utilities, like the lights at the softball field. So Mr. LeBlanc is looking into that and what that cost would look like. We use those lights, so we're not opposed to helping with that. If there was any request down the road, like a bigger expense, like actually adding lights to the baseball field, we bring that to you guys. Probably more opposed to that. We have a financial seminar coming up for our kids called That's Life. We've done this before, and we have that coming up in March. And the kids go through basically like a financial literacy activity. They get assigned careers and they have to go around to different booths and take part in different life activities and manage their finances. So it's a personal finance type activity. The last time we did it was a couple of years ago, and it went over pretty well. We're hosting that this year. Gary's coming down here to do that with us. That's put on by the Latah County Extension Office.
Morgan came home, she said, I'm a security guard and I've got twin boys. She was like, you know how much money I make a month? Yeah. So she didn't draw a very good job.
That is a bummer.
But it's a good lesson.
It is a good lesson, yeah. He didn't want to be a security guard.
Let's see, Fieldhouse update. We have a contractor invite meeting coming up here in a few days. That was moved from February 3rd. You guys saw, I emailed it out today, the bid that's in the paper right now. Design West did indicate that Masons aren't overly busy right now, and they are looking for work, so that's good. Legislative update, I don't really have too much there. You know, I kind of wait and see. There's a bill going through to make the enrollment our mechanism for funding permanent, so we'll see how that goes. That's going to happen this year. There's a bill that came out recently for all-day kindergarten. There's a dyslexia bill put out recently. So there's some things just coming out in the last week or so to pay attention to. So we'll see how those go. Curriculum, I mentioned this earlier. We're in need of updated math curriculum in grades 7 through 12. We've requested some samples from different publishers. We've got about 3 so far. Once we have samples, Ms. Manful and I will put together a committee of people and try to get feedback from both the committee but also parents in general too, and offer that people to review those things. So we'll hopefully bring something to you here in the next 3 months or so to have that ready to go for next year. The things that we're looking at there when it comes to that curriculum is the coherence of it really is it's a big deal. The rigor, the alignment with standards, and just usability in general. I think when you have a teacher that and all of our teachers are in this situation, but math is what we're talking about, that has every class, or at least multiple classes, they really have to have curriculum that's usable to make it manageable for them. So that's something that we're looking at as well. Interestingly, we looked at curriculum in about 5 or 6 districts, I think. We looked at a lot of the Treasure Valley districts, and we look at them partly because they have people that's their sole job, just curriculum in that department. And so they have people that can spend time on this. And there was definitely consistency among all of those districts with the curriculum that we're using, which was nice to see. On Ed Reports, which is where we've been looking as well, as far as rigor, coherence, alignment with the standards, that same curriculum also scored well, did well. So, but we're looking at others too, though. So anyway, hopefully in the next few months, we'll have some more information there for you. I have a meeting Wednesday morning with the math lead at the State Department to talk more about that process as well. I think that's it. Any questions for me? Okay.
All right, Steve, are there any trustee reports?
I'd like to talk. I went to the senior project meeting here at the school, and I just wanted to say I was really, really impressed with the projects that were presented. I know we had a couple kids come and talk to us, so we saw kind of a preview of a few of them, but if you get a chance, it would be kind of fun to actually maybe even see a little list of what everybody did. But quite a few of them were things in our community and things at the school. And anyway, I was very impressed with our group of graduating seniors. They all did a really nice job, and I got a chance to visit with each of them, and there were quite a few kids that I just didn't know, and it was a really, really great class, and I thought they did a really nice job. So anyway.
Along those same lines, we're going to do a little bit of an overhaul on the senior project and some of the things that we do with that. And our goal will be to narrow the focus a little bit, and not tell kids what they need to do it on, but have them put more of a college or career focus on it, on what they're doing. And I think that will actually be helpful for them as well. And we've been talking with the KJ7 Foundation about the senior projects because they help fund a lot of the costs associated with that. And so we've been getting ideas back and forth with them, and that's one of the things that they're going to do as well, as far as if a kid wants to fill out a grant for that, it does need to have a college or career focus, and that's one of the things that we've kind of taken with, and we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to have all of them have that focus, along with some other minor changes there too, but that's kind of the major.
Any other reports? All right, let's move into the action items. First action item is to consider joining the Latah Broadband Coalition.
Okay, so Christina Mangiapini, I probably butchered that. I'm going to go with it though. She emailed right at about 7 o'clock tonight and said she is not able to make it. She is with the county, and she sent me this to show, and what she is asking the district to do is to consider joining the Latah County Broadband Coalition. And maybe I'll show this, and then Dan, if you have any information about this, you want to add it? Okay, here we go. I haven't seen this. I don't know how it's going to work. So we'll see.
Hi there, I'm Christina Mangiapani. I work on grants for Latah County, as well as broadband planning and coordinating American Rescue Plan Act funding and projects. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about the Broadband Coalition and the exciting new funding landscape for broadband. And I apologize that I was double booked and I'm not able to be there in person, so you get this disembodied voice. But hopefully the PowerPoint works for you and provides some more information and background on broadband and the coalition. I wanted to start by taking a minute to provide some background on broadband. For many years prior to 2019, the state and the region were making slow but steady progress on broadband expansion. Ultimately, leadership recognized progress wasn't being made as quickly as a new, more technology-based economy demanded. So Governor Little established a broadband task force that studied the landscape throughout Idaho, identified and evaluated obstacles, and reported their recommendations for overcoming them. This was when the Federal Communications Commission still defined adequate broadband service at 25 megabits per second download speed and 3 megabits per second upload speed, and most grant programs were geared to internet service provider applicants. But then COVID-19 happened, and of course, it changed everything. All of this work became urgent, and the barriers associated with costs, territories, and slow or non-existent service needed to be surmounted. Unfortunately, what leaders were discovering in their attempts to very quickly deploy solutions for chronic needs related to the pandemic was that not only were they running into the same old obstacles, but also that most of the projects, like ones completed with CARES Act funding, wouldn't be scalable for the long-term needs of communities. They were Band-Aids. So a few of the ways the federal government and grant-making entities are trying to move past Band-Aids and move toward long-term solutions are to first, define broadband as basic infrastructure, Second, update minimum standards to future-proof build-outs, which means 1 gigabit symmetrical for anchor institutions like schools, and 100 megabits per second up and down for households. And third, require government-led or partnered projects. We see these moves in recent legislation, like in the American Rescue Plan Act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and virtually every single grant program or funding opportunity for broadband. The National Association of Counties, as well as the Idaho Broadband Task Force, have recognized that broadband is essential infrastructure for our communities. And we now know with new maps and data that our communities are still very much underserved. If we take a look at some of the new broadband maps using data collected from actual users and not information reported by internet service providers, we get a much better idea of what's really going on in our communities. This one's created by the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, and it displays key indicators of broadband needs, including different data sets that reveal where folks don't have quality internet access down to the census block. As you can see, the northeastern part of Latah County shows that over 16% of households have no internet access, and those that do have speeds less than 10.3. In the central eastern part of the county, the picture is much the same. 19% of households with no access at all, and those with access have less than 10.3. I'll remind you to keep in mind that these areas were previously reported as served at 25.3, and now we need to make the leap to 100 megabits per second up and down. Finally, the southeastern tract, 20% with no access and less than 10.3 for those with service. This new broadband map shows us exactly what our community members have been telling us all along. We are underserved, and even more accurate maps are in the works at the federal and state levels. But the question now is, what do we do about it, and how do we pay for it? A large part of the issue is how Latah County is situated. We're 98% rural by geography and 32% rural by population, which makes reaching the 12,500 residents who live outside the city of Moscow exceptionally difficult. Add on to that the fact that Moscow is situated on the westernmost edge of the county, close to the University of Idaho and WSU, Highway 95, and the major fiber corridor, whereas the rest of the county is 1,070 square miles of topographically diverse terrain with households, cities, and schools spread out all across it. What's more, to the north, east, and south of the county lines is largely unpopulated timbered acreage, which provides no alternate route for connection and essentially cuts off most of rural Latah County from broadband services and infrastructure. So the idea here is to band together to play some role in the planning and building the basic infrastructure that's necessary for making the new minimum speeds even possible. In order to do that, we need to collaborate with other municipalities and anchor institutions, like you and others listed here, that could serve not only as connection points for infrastructure, but also as partners in leveraging funds and projects to apply to the different pots of money that are available to each of these different entities. As far as funding goes, I just wanted to give you a quick idea of the truly unprecedented amount of money that's being dedicated to broadband over the next few years. That number there is over $77 billion. And it doesn't even include every single program that allows for broadband projects. Some of the programs you see here are existing ones that have seen an increase in program funding, like the USDA Rural Development's Reconnect program, while others are brand new, like the Capital Projects Fund, the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program through the Infrastructure Bill, and the Idaho Broadband Advisory Board's Audit funding. Many of these will be state-led programs, while others will be governed at the federal level. As you can see from some of the titles, these funding opportunities prioritize different entities as eligible applicants, like educational institutions, healthcare providers, and local governments. This is a big part of the reason why working together makes the most sense to achieve the greatest outcome. Which brings us to getting ready, and what the broadband utility assessment will help springboard us into achieving. Regardless of the route we take to get there, applying for funding will be much easier if we know what we want to accomplish, where the gaps are in our infrastructure, and how much it'll cost to fill them. A future-proof broadband plan can be built on this foundational information, and then we can go about developing projects, partnerships, and grant applications to build it. Our goal with the countywide coalition is to create a group of stakeholders that will be able to take these steps to be grant ready by the time this avalanche of money hits us, so we can be well prepared to apply for it and bring reliable, affordable, robust broadband to the most rural and remote corners of Latah County. And with that, I want to say thanks so much for listening. And if I were there, I would be asking if there were any questions that I could help answer. But if you do have any, feel free to follow up with me. And you probably have experts in the room who will be able to talk about some of these things. But we really hope that you join on to this coalition. We really are going to need to band together in order to make this happen for our schools, for our cities, for our libraries, for our businesses, and for our citizens. So thanks for your time again, and we hope to see you on this coalition.
So basically, the long and short of this is that I have personal experience with this because if you were to bring up Google Maps, I could take you down to the end of Jones Road is the fiber backhaul that goes from Genesee down to the Julietta grade, goes down the hill, goes across, and then heads up to Orofino. And that was the old Frontier fiber corridor. That's our backhaul fiber. So I initially contacted, at the time, Frontier. How much is it going to cost to get us to pull fiber up my road to service all the homes that are on there? Needless to say, it's been a multi-year process and we've gotten nowhere on it. So one of the problems that we had that the county commissioners became aware of when I actually went and for the second time put a proposal in, and that proposal they approved to go to pull out this pot of money. And then they asked what the cost change was, because I explained that there was it was a fourfold increase on cost. And the commissioners were a bit taken back by that. And they asked some pointed questions. How is it that this suddenly went up 4 times in a year from where it was last time? Well, there's a lot of money that's getting set to come out here, and we don't have a plan in place as to how we're going to A, spend it, B, put in for it, and then where's it going to go? And so that's the point behind this coalition, is that if we get all of the people who would be benefiting from this in one group, we can actually sit down with the county commissioners and the grant writers and say, okay, where is everything in the county? That's been one of our problems, because technically, since Idaho is, especially a lot of the services around here are ran by the PUC, that's all public information. But a lot of the telcos don't want to give out that information because they don't want you to know where that stuff is at, because that's proprietary to them. Well, if you have a coalition together, you can subpoena that stuff from the PUC, whereas it's more difficult as an individual to try and pull that. So one of the thoughts that they had behind this coalition is that once they get everybody on board, then they can put together an advisory committee, and those people are going to be responsible with doing all the planning, working on it. You have Christina, who's going to be writing all the grants, and then we can actually go to the Department of Commerce for the state of Idaho and say, look, we have the whole county on board here. we have a lot more leverage. This is what we're planning on doing. This is an actual plan we have in place instead of everybody trying to piecemeal things together. Because that hasn't worked the past 3 times that we've all tried to do stuff. So that's what they're asking, is basically for us to just come out and say, yes, we're on board with that. We would like to have this for a community. It's been interesting though, when she's talking about the broadband maps, I was one of the ones that went to the feds and said, your map says where I'm at, says I have 25.3 access and I have none, 0. And the feds are like, well, no, that's not what the telepost told us. Oh no, so they've had to go back and rewrite those, and it's pretty interesting to see how little access everyone has. So, and the other thing that we've tried to put forward to the state is, you're talking about equity in the classroom, right? We had this big push from the state to get devices out to students, right? Everybody's got to have a device because the districts who weren't at one-to-one need to be at one-to-one. Okay, that's great, but if I go home and I have no internet, I can't do any work. So that's what this is. A lot of this has to do it from our standpoint. So, any other questions you have about the coalition?
So this will have an advisory board?
That's what the plan is at this point. I'm not exactly sure how they're planning on doing it, but that was, they want to get people who have no tie to the providers to sit back and look at the big map and say, what do we need to do and how do we need to get it done? Because right now we've let the providers run the map and put in for the money, and that hasn't worked so well for, you know, people out here.
So do we have the capacity coming into the area? Do we just need to distribute it, or do we need more capacity coming in?
Both.
Both.
Yeah. Like right now, the TDS for the longest of time was, when my predecessor was here, and TDS was originally pulling fiber up the canyon, right? They were going from Arrow Bridge all the way up to Deering. Technically, since all of that was, a lot of that was the USDA grants that came through in that first round, this was years ago, we had rights to place in that conduit. So at the time, we could have put fiber, our own fiber from Julietta up to this building, because it sits right out there. Okay. We would just had to have bought the fiber for them to put in for that whole thing. We didn't do it, and so TDS closed that loop and then basically said that, nope, this is ours. Well, now you have, I think it's, who is the other one that's in town? Spectrum, I think, has come through, and they're lighting up, because there's dark fiber on the ground, they're starting to light some of that stuff up. And TDS is trying to expand business because they've got competition. That's why I say on my E-rate stuff this year, I'll give you a great example. The feds give me $1 per meg per student. So technically I get $250 from the feds every month to pay for a 250 meg connection. Well, the providers have known that. And so they go, oh, well, you only get $250, so we're only going to give you what you can pay for it. Well, I'm going to need a lot more than that now because of what we're doing. We're utilizing it just that much more. So I need to be able to shop this out for somebody and say, what's the market going to give me? What's the best that you can do? Well, under our last contract, it was not very good. So now I'll be interested to see if anybody else wants to pick up and put in a proposal. I'm expecting at least 3 bids this time around. Before, I didn't even get 1. And I had to file with the feds to let them know that there were no bidders, and we have to go with the solution that we had. So.
Well, I think partnering with like the healthcare is probably the way, with everything that's going on right now, getting, you know, like you said, that coalition where you have some of those other entities that might have even a little more pull to help get stuff here, I think is smart, so. Yeah.
And that money's going to come in hot and fast, and everybody's going to be vying for it to try and do all their little pet projects to get it. And that's what a lot of them in my opinion, that's what a lot of them ended up getting funded as. Yes, Elk River needs a connection, and they finally got it, but they had to fight for every last square inch of them to be able to get that stuff out there. That shouldn't be the way that it is. If you can electrify every house in America, you can't bring broadband to every house in America. That doesn't make it, that just, to me, just doesn't make any sense. So at least we're trying to nudge it and say, no, we're serious. The entire county is on board with this whole thing. All the major players are on board. And that's to include people like Schweitzer, University of Idaho, all the major players are going to be on board with this. That's my understanding of it. So.
Is there any other alternative to this? Is everybody else trying to do the same thing?
Just go back. If we don't do this, it's going to be the same thing. Everybody's going to be fighting for the exact same pot of money and seeing what we can do.
So they're asking for free commitments from us, a rep, information sharing, and leverage available funding.
Yeah, so what they mean by that is, let's say we were to put a coalition, with this coalition, and let's say that we each have to apply to a federal program to be reimbursed for monies. So like our E-rate stuff, right? So if we needed to, all of the schools needed to, if I needed to dip into Category 1 or Category 2 monies to do that, I'm saying that yes, if it benefits all the rest of everybody else and we get increased service, yes, I will file on behalf of this to get our monies back. It's not pulling out a general fund. It's basically saying that we're going to come together and we're all going to tie into one entity and bid on that behalf. I'm probably going to end up being the representative that's going to go forth on this one because like I said, I've been working with them since day one on this. And it's going to be a really long, ugly uphill battle on this. I can tell you that right now, because I know what we're up against.
What do you anticipate timeframes to look like?
Well, it's government, so hopefully before the next ice age, we'll have moved on this. As a former federal employee, I can tell you that yes, I'm used to the glacial pace of government, but that money's coming in, and it's. I mean, everyone's trying to make plans on what do we do with all literally all this money. And so that's why they want to get this done. So that way when the window's open, we already have a plan in place and we're getting stuff submitted. Because also, like with anything from the federal government, the paperwork that goes along with this is unbelievable. So. All right. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
What do you think? You want to put that in form of a motion? I'll second it. We moved to second that we join the Broadband Coalition. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next action item is hire request CPAs for the district audit. Do you have anything more you want to add, Kim?
One thing I forgot to tell you is that they do audit Cottonwood, Highland Candy, and Lapway. So they do some schools closer to us as well. The other one does a lot of bigger schools. That's all of them, I guess.
This will be effective when?
Huh?
If we hire them, it's effective when?
Probably as soon as you guys okay it, then they'll start just helping us out if we need it. Go from there. And we did pay, well, like I said, it's $11,000 for them, but we paid, Jen, what do they, Pavement and Ross, quite a bit more than that because they charged us each month for when we called in and this and that, and they're not gonna charge us for that kind of stuff too, so. And the other company is at $18,000, I believe. I don't know, it'd be nice to try these people out. They seem to be really good. I mean, they were easy to talk to.
is it included like a site visit once or on?
So they'll come down if we want them to, or they will do everything online, whatever, so. I guess they come up, because they're, yeah, sorry.
And these other options here, the $2,500, I don't quite understand what that's.
Well, that's the
about.
GASB, and that's, Hayden and Ross did all this stuff for us as well. It's all extra, so,
And there's a need to do that?
yeah, it's important that they do it for us.
So they say optional.
Right, they say optional, but it's best that they do it rather than us. And it's all the same, I mean, yeah, Hayden and Ross did all that for us as well, so.
I think these guys do a lot of work in the state. And I think they were the guys that gave the presentation at the ISBA convention.
Yeah, I believe they did.
They seem to be.
Now they got several schools listed there on the next page.
They've got quite a few schools,
Yeah.
but I was just letting you know, they do a few schools close to us as well, so.
And Steve, you were saying do you read this?
No,
No, this is that's for the health.
that was the benefits consultant, Murray Group.
I don't think there's much choice. I think that's a good price.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to hire Quest CPAs for our district audit.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we hire Quest CPAs for our district audit services. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay, policy review. We haven't had any of that for
Haven't had any for a while.
a while. So let's Steve take it away.
This is the winter update from ISBA. We've got two first readings in here, and then the rest are just up for amendment. So this is to review, and then they would come back next month for approval or amendment. So stop me along the way. Policy 3000 is infants, placement, and transfer, and that's up for amendment. This update adds a relevant cross-reference. So a lot of these tonight are just changes to references, not substantial changes to the policy, but it adds a relevant cross-reference to the policy that provides full details on the required vaccines and information on exemptions. So if you remember, I think it was last year in the legislative session, or maybe the year before, there were some changes as far as what schools need to do to notify people of their rights regarding exemptions. Like anytime we sent out information, we also had to include this other information about you don't need to get vaccinated. And so this updates the policy related to that, the cross-reference. And it's right there on the first page. There's also a section there on the second page about deleting that advanced enrollment for military dependents section because it's outdated. Policy 3030, I like the update to 3000. This update adds a cross-reference on the policy on immunizations and exemptions. The district version also removes a paragraph that was mistakenly included twice on the previous policy. So, on that first page you see, as described in policy 3525 there, under admittance, and then there's the cross-reference at the end in the reference section. So, fairly minor stuff. The next one is 3370. This update adds language noting searches of students should be conducted in the presence of at least 2 staff members. And also avoiding situations in which a staff member and a student are alone together is the best practice for avoiding sexual misconduct or the appearance of impropriety. At the request of an ISBA member, we've added language encouraging that searches be conducted by a staff member of the student's gender. This is an optional update to an optional policy. So we do have this policy already in place. Is there any, yeah, so we already have this policy in place. Is there any comments or questions on that one? We already do that anyway. If we have, a female, we get a female staff. This just solidifies it. Okay, the next one is 35. Let me see here. 3370p. Am I right? Okay, I'm going back and forth between 3 different pages here. This one, in addition to minor changes prompted by the edits of 3370, this update adds new language aimed at preventing cases in which law enforcement directs staff to conduct a search. Law enforcement would not be permitted to conduct per advice given at a recent Idaho Ed Law Conference. So basically this is saying that school staff should not be conducting searches that the police are unwilling to do. This is a recommended update to an optional policy. Okay. 3530, and this one is also an amendment. This update includes optional language for making plans for a student to return to a school after they were identified as an imminent risk of suicide. It also adds further details on the professional development required for staff involved in addressing suicide. This is a recommended update to a required policy. So if you look at that policy, it takes out a little bit on that first section under prevention there on the first page. Additional training on suicide prevention for all staff. We do suicide training for all staff through Safe Schools already. In fact, we just finished that up over the last month or so. So it's not an optional thing for staff members who are in contact with kids regularly. The second page adds quite a bit there. And one of the sections there in the middle, the optional section, I'm going to read that. Following notification of district staff of a suicide attempt by a student or following the identification of a student as being at imminent risk of suicide, the building principal may require a note from the student's doctor or counselor stating that it is the doctor or counselor's opinion that the student is ready to return to school. The student and their parent or guardian may meet with the school counselor to create a plan for the student's return to school, including any appropriate accommodations needed by the student. So that's optional. Any thoughts on that part?
Well, since it says may, I don't think there's
Yeah, I don't have any issues. Okay, so Pete. Okay, any other comments or questions on that one? Okay, moving on. 4210F, right? This one is a first reading. And this is a first reading because we already have a facilities use agreement. We've just used our own form. It hasn't been part of our policy manual. So this would basically change it over to the policy manual, which this is a little bit more thorough than what we have in place right now. As you look that over, first and second page, it's basically just an agreement to use our facilities and things that people would have to follow if they wanted to do that and sign. Is there any comments or questions on that one as you look it over? This one does break down cost a little bit more than our current one, which we could be in a situation at some time where that would be nice. We generally don't charge anybody, but we've had situations where people have requested the gym that they would be making money off of using the gym, and it had nothing to do with our community or our schools. So in that type of situation, it probably would be good to set up a payment to use our facilities, especially since we're the ones that have to clean up and pay the bills and all that stuff. So this would make that a little bit more doable.
Yeah, I think of like when that other football league uses our field for their tournament,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and we don't have any teams in it.
Yeah, something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, we've had basketball tournaments, double basketball, things like that, asked to use the gym. We've always denied it because we're always busy anyway. But if we ever wanted to do that, we'd probably want to charge them because they're making a lot to it. Okay, that was a first reading. The next one is also 4210P. Yeah, I kind of go back and forth there. That one is the procedure for the same thing. This is also a new policy. In this format here, it doesn't look like a new policy, it looks like an amendment. That's because when we purchased our manual, this policy wasn't included. When every once in a while we come across a policy that we didn't actually get down back when, that they send an amendment to, so this is a first reading for us. With this one, it just talks about the amendment, but the edit clarifies what is and what is not allowed when it comes to the use of district or charter school facilities by members of the community. The change to the original policy here that we didn't have in the first place was for political events, and just making sure that there was equity there if that were to happen. Is there any comments or questions there? Formatting is also bizarre on that one too. That's how we got it though. Basically, it was saying the event may not be held by the district in support of or in opposition to any candidate or ballot measure. And it also talks about fees for using the facility, insurance, school equipment, things that we found on the previous policy. That's the first reading. Okay, so that'll come back as the second reading for approval next month, as is. Okay. 7710, that one is an amendment. This is for bond continuing disclosure and certification requirements. These edits add conditions that require material event filing and which require analysis to determine whether they require a bond filing. These changes were made at the recommendation of the experts and polytroxel attorneys and counselors to recommend an update to a recommended policy. Probably won't ever apply, but it's nice to be current with policies. Any questions about that one? Okay. A lot of these we'll probably never see them, but it's nice to have the manual current. And that's all I have for policies.
All right. Any questions? So those are coming up for acceptance.
Yeah. The amendments and then adopt.
Okay, the last item is our board member input for future agenda items.